sisters, good morning, it's Sabine. I'd like to inform you that I've updated the article portion on the 15th of. I've given a little bit more attention to this day in Jewish history and in biblical prophecy. And I'm going to give you a quick summary of what the article reads. So on the 15th of Av, the Israelites found forgiveness for the sin of not believing the spies. There's a beautiful picture of a maiden snatch of women, maidens dancing in the vineyards of Shiloh. It's a beautiful picture of the rapture. It was also the end of the year for planting, and on this day in history, at a certain point in time, the ban on intertribal marriage was lifted, which has a connection with the marriage of Ruth and Boaz. It was also a day which was called the Day of the Axe. It's related to wood cutting, and it is also a day which is really highlighted by our spiritual enemy. So on Av 15, the Jews, while wandering the desert, were commanded by Moses to sleep in their graves as punishment for not believing the spies who were sent out to scout the promised land. The Jews who slept in their graves each year would arise from their graves and discover that 15,000 of the older generation had died in the night. This continued to happen until all the older generation had died off, and Tu B'Av was celebrated because they knew that at long last they were freed from the curse of the grave. They were free to then enter the promised land under the leadership of Joshua. So Tu B'Av is known as a day of forgiveness for the sin of the spies, much like Yom Kippur was a day of forgiveness for the sin of the golden calf. So it is tied to the full redemption and entry into the promised land, symbolizing this preordained inheritance. So in the promised land, Joshua divided the inheritance. And on Av 15, there's also a beautiful event in Jewish history which is still commemorated to this day. It's actually considered as the Jewish Valentine's Day. It's related to the snatch of the maidens in Shiloh. So if you click on the links in the article, you can find more underlying information of past research I did myself, but also other people who have contributed a lot of insight into these topics. So the information is not just mine. I'm standing on the shoulders of many brothers and sisters who are waiting like we are, or who have gone before us. So the maidens of Shiloh are referred to in Numbers 21:21. And there is a picture of a bride snatch in the vineyard. And what is also detailed with regard to this narrative is that the watchmen also made tabernacles in the vineyard. So we know that we are in the overlapping stage of the summer wheat harvest and the early grape harvest. We have shared a lot of information about the calling on us as watchmen, as watching out for the harvest, but also announcing the times and the Lord's coming to the wayward and people who are still in unbelief. So this picture is coming together on the 15th of Av. There was also a ban on intertribal marriage lifted, connected to the wedding of Ruth and Boaz. You can read more about it over here. It was also the day of the breaking of the axe. So when the Holy Temple existed, the cutting of firewood for the altar was completed on this day every year. And the event was celebrated by feasting and rejoicing and a breaking of the axes. So if we look at it prophetically, it could be interpreted as the preparation for the sacrificial altar. We know now that the world at large is considered as an altar of sacrifice. And it's going to be trialed by fire, meaning the tribulation. So in that respect, it could have meaning as well. And prophetically, this day ties with Luke verses 26 to 29, as of 15 is the last day. It is the last day for building, for planting, for marrying, for buying and selling. And we are called to pay attention to when all these things are happening. So R15 in that respect is a very interesting day to look at. And by means of this link, you can find more information why this day is connected to the verses in Luke 17. So in Jeroboam's day, the roadblocks to Jerusalem were removed. And if we look at our entry into heaven as a spiritual Jerusalem, it's very interesting that Hosea removed the blockage which had been put out by Jeroboam to Jerusalem on this exact day. It was the day of the last of the year, before the Feast of Trumpets. And another red thread in the tapestry of Tu B'Av is that all these pictures are pointing to a reiteration of people who were first set apart by the Lord, willing to go out by faith, and they would later be reintegrated, be gathered together unto the Father. And that is what we are witnessing right now in the constellation Cancer, where the sun is going to enter into the beehive cluster really soon. So Tu B'Av is also the month of the Father making arrangements for the wedding of his son. It is a high point in the calendar, much like a mountain is a high point, as well as the summer solstice is a high point in an astronomical sense. And in ancient times, the father selected a bride for his son. It was the father's will or desire. So, should the rapture occur in the month of Av, it would be especially appropriate, as Av means father, and it's derived from the will or desire. Jesus, being desire ages, and both Neowise, the comet about to enter the star cluster where the mother and man-child are found, in addition to the sun entering Cancer at that manger location. The beehive is known also as the manger, is like a double picture of the sun, S-U-N, being found and entering into a birth, potentially a rebirth picture. So in August, there's also oil scarcity because we are ending the time frame of the year, and people are going to prepare for the oil harvest later on, and that could also tie into the wedding parable of the cry going out at midnight, behold the bridegroom comes, and the critical weight of being prepared and having enough oil for the lamps to be lit and to be seen as we go out by faith. So olive oil for the lamps would be most precious in the months where it was least available. So the merchants had little to sell, little or none. And during the 3 summer months before the next annual olive harvest for Israel, and that begins in the month of Chesman. So the watchmen build their tabernacles in the vineyard at this time to guard and shelter the grape harvest, which is also a wedding picture, as the bride is reflected as the tender grapes. And we know, of course, that the tabernacles or Sukkot, the Sukkah, is also reflective of a picture of the wedding, as in Jewish tradition, the man and the woman are married underneath a Sukkah. What is also interesting is that the central bullseye blood moon of July 27th in 2018 took place over Jerusalem exactly on Tu B'Av, on their calendar, on the Hebrew calendar. So the central bullseye blood moon stood over Jerusalem, and it on their calendar it was of 15. So blood moons are usually interpreted as a foreboding of judgment. So if you look at this infographic of the Lord's perfect sign, you see over here how the central bullseye blood moon on July 27th took place on the 15th of Av on their calendar. So Tu B'Av this year is August 4th and 5th, and we see how the spiritual enemy is trying to hijack and captivate this day to allure people's attention to their meaning and their plans with regard to this date. So it is Obama's alleged birthday, 44 days from the summer solstice, related to death and destruction, him being the 44th president. It was also August the 5th, so Tu B'Av has 2 days on Torah calendar, August 4 and 5th. August the 5th was the laying of the cornerstone of the Statue of Liberty, the bearer of false light. It is not the bearer of the light of God, it's the bearer of the light of the enemy. We also may recall the U.S. flag falling or being disconnected, to fall from on the ground on the display during the London Olympics. Interestingly, Tu B'Av is also the day where the Jewish sages expect their Messiah, the Mashiach, we know to be the false Messiah, because they're going to be deceived first at the time of the rapture, and only later the false Messiah is going to be exposed, and people are going to be, not everyone, but some are going to be moved towards coming to faith in the Lord Jesus Christ. So in their interpretation, after his birth on the 9th of Av, so they say, there is a revealing of himself and a betrothal to his bride on the 15th of Av. So according to their rabbinical sources, Talmud, other sources, the 15th of Av is connected to the betrothal and the wedding to their false Messiah. So the Hebrew calendar is designed in such a way that Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, occurs on the same day of the week as does the first day of Pesach, of Easter. And Tu B'Av is connected to the 7th day of Pesach, meaning it has a correlation with the splitting of the Reed Sea. The sea, the Israelites crossed over into the Promised Land. So if you look at the purposeful design of the Hebrew calendar, which has been disconnected from the biblical principles, you see that both the 9th of Av and the 15th of Av have a picture of sacrifice, of redemption, and then 7 days later, crossing over into the Promised Land. So below the update, you can find some examples of how the enemy is trying to not just distort and hide the constellation Coma Berenices, but how they want to hijack and replace it with their depictions in ancient times, in modern times, in royal crests, but also in, for instance, the design of a company logo, Punawalla Group, responsible for the production of COVID-19 vaccines. And we see that the enemy is very much aware of the key importance of the constellation Coma, the desired sun, and how they want to not just distort and hide it, but hijack its meaning and offer people false security. So praise the Lord that the Scripture Spirit, and to understand the original meaning of constellations, we're not going to be sidetracked or hijacked by the enemy, but we're going to be at peace and wait for the bridegroom.
Hello, people of God. After I announced my soon coming video, I held back. I wanted to wait until the 24th of July, but for a few days now, I have information that points to the Feast of Shiloh, the forgotten feast, the mystery feast of Shiloh. And that happens on the 15th of the month of Ab. And let's watch this short clip real quick.
Today, when you live in Samaria and you see the vineyards growing, and you see that the harvest time is 15th of Av, it's physically in front of you, you feel it.
So we think about the 7 feasts of Israel. Now we're looking at an 8th feast, which I think, and it has to do with the fruit of the vine.
You know, we've always read in the Bible for thousands of years that the girls of Shiloh dance in the vineyards on the 15th of Av. Today, when you live in Samaria and you see the vineyards growing, and you see that the harvest time is the 15th of Av, when the spies come back to the Israelites to show them how much the land is good, they bring, the huge grapes,
yes.
the big grapes. That is the sign of Israel, and in a way, the forgotten feast, the 15th of Av.
And in verse 10 here, he says, the scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh come, and that's the place we're talking about. Unto him shall be the gathering of his people be. So, here we have the Messiah given the name Shiloh or Shiloh.
Okay, so we have a prophecy in the book of Genesis, chapter 49, when Jacob was given the final blessing to every one of his child. He gave a prophecy that said, until Shiloh comes, and to him will be the gathering of the people, meaning the rapture, when Shiloh comes. It's a form of the Messiah. Shiloh is symbolic of the Messiah. It means the coming Messiah. So we have in the book of Judges, in chapter 21, the two different raptures of the virgins, right? When the two different groups of the tribe of Benjamin go and kidnap the virgins, pointing exactly to the feast of Shiloh, which happens when they came out to dance in dances in the vineyards on the 15th of Av. And that is so prophetic, because right now on July 22nd, apparently the Israeli government splitting, falling apart again. Netanyahu called for new elections on November the 18th, meaning the prophecy of the Rabbi Sasson Hai Shoshani is still in place. And obviously we do have a chance on the 9th of Av, but I think this could actually happen on the 15th of Av. I remember a dream that I have shared with you in the past, that the Lord visited me in a short dream and said, I come in 15 days. This is the 15th of Ab, and it's the third day of the full moon. Everything complies with the patterns of the scriptures that point to the third day of the full moon. So nothing happens by the end of tomorrow. We'll definitely have, I would say, the 9th of Ab, which is from the 29th to the 30th. But in my opinion, this will happen on the 15th of Ab, which is August 4th to the 5th. Now, interestingly, this year, the 4th of August is not the 216th day of the year, which is the birth of the Antichrist, but it is the 217th day of the year because it is a leap year. The 217th day, it means that February had 29 days this year. Therefore, 217 again. I mean, I have so many videos with the 217 pattern, is incredibly, again, the day of the ark, happening on the 15th of Av, the feast of the Lord in Shiloh. To him will be the gathering of people. That is a prophecy. Now I wonder, because the Bible says that he calls the end from the beginning, and this prophecy was given in Genesis, if that is the day of the rapture, the feast of Shiloh, the mystery feast, the hidden and forgotten feast of Shiloh. And as you saw, these rabbis that put together this documentary, they have it for sale online. And it's amazing. They explain with details. I just was able to put a few frames of what they share, but the documentary is super interesting. Obviously, I wasn't going to be able to play it all because they will cut the video. But it gives you an idea that the 15th is very biblical. That's where the virgins were raptured. That is exactly the day, the 15th of Av, where the 400 virgins were raptured, and then we actually have two sets of virgins raptured by two sets of Benjamins, which is exactly what is going on, because at the very end of the chapter, it says that Israel was without a king in those days. It's the exact reality of Israel today days. And now we have the two Benjamins, Benjamin Gantz and Benjamin Netanyahu, fighting each other. None of their kingship will succeed, said the prophet. And now they have called for elections again. And the question is, are we living on the 15th of Av? Now, when we go and we check what 515 is, because the month of Av is actually the month of the religious calendar, and we check 15, and it is to deem worthy, to account, to be worthy. Remember what the book of Luke 21 verse 36 says, that we need to be accounted worthy. We need to be accounted worthy to escape all these things that shall come. And 515 is to deem worthy, to be accounted worthy. Because of a dream I had in 2013 where the Lord said, September, there's no time left, there's no time left. I would say if nothing happens by the 15th of Ab, we're definitely looking to Rosh Hashanah or past Rosh Hashanah, one of the days of September, probably towards the end of September, or even on the first 3 days, the third day of October, which is the third day of the full moon. One very interesting thing is that the full moon of August, which falls precisely on the 15th of the month of Av, is called the barley moon, the fruit moon, and the grain moon. I mean the barley moon, hello, and the fruit moon. That is very convenient for the rapture right now. And it is the 15th of Av, the feast of Shiloh. I think that we have a strong chance by the 217th day of the year. Let's keep watching and let's see what comes in the news. There are threats of meteors falling. There are all kinds of threats. I mean, the whole world is boiling with volcanoes, with earthquakes, with wars and rumors of war. And Israel attacking Iran is a matter of days now. So we are definitely at the end of the road. We need to keep our heads looking up, watching, repenting, seeking the face of the Lord, and awaiting patiently. Until next time, God bless you all. Shalom.
Hello, people of God. The more I dig in, the more I research into the New Wine Festival, the more I am convinced that this could be it. I want to start by saying there are three feasts that the Lord called Israel to present themselves in front of the Lord in a year, 3 times a year. Now, there are two that have been very obvious for us in the latter days because of the blood moons being on Passover tabernacles, Passover tabernacles. And I want to specify that the blood moons have not been precisely in Passover and tabernacles, but on unleavened bread and tabernacles. Passover is actually the first day, the 14th, but the blood moons have been on the 15th every time, meaning the first day of unleavened bread, according to scriptures that the Lord commanded that 3 times a year we needed to present ourselves in the presence of God. And this is on unleavened bread, on the Feast of Weeks, and the Feast of Tabernacles. If we notice, the Feast of Unleavened Bread begins on the 15th of the month. The Feast of Tabernacles begins on the 15th of the month. And there is a huge mystery here that at this point I am confused. I don't know if the Feast of Shiloh could actually be the Feast of Pentecost, because they call it a Feast of the Lord every year. It was a Feast of the Lord, yearly celebrated, and they knew that the feasts of the Lord were only 7, and they're calling it a Feast of the Lord, and it was on the 15th of the month of Ab. And it's very convenient because the other 2 feasts, the first one and the last one, are on the 15th of the month as well. So what I did is I did a count from Passover, and counting from Passover until the 15th of Ab, you have 120 days. I was like, wow, this is interesting, because the month of Ab is the 5th month, and the 15th of the month is the festival of the new wine. And in the book of Acts, which is the 5th book of the New Testament, on the 15th verse, Peter rises up. It says there were 120 gathered on the upper room. So 120 is the same number that we have from Passover till the 15th of Ab. Every year, from Passover until the 15th of Ab, the festival of new wine, where the virgins came out of dancing dances. It is a festival that it has been revived completely in Israel. And now I'm going to play a short clip for you to see, which is amazing. It is exactly and uniquely about marrying, finding your soulmate, finding your other half. And obviously, in the book of Judges, in chapter 21, we have the rapture of the virgins, which says a lot by itself. It is a practice that has been going on for thousands of years, literally. It has been completely revived. And we have a fact that from the 17th of Tammuz until the 9th of Ab, it is prohibited any form of rejoicing, including a wedding. Meaning, it's not likely that the Lord will come in from the 17th of Tammuz until the 9th of Ab, those 3 weeks of mourning that are prohibiting, totally forbids to rejoice in any way, including a wedding. So the most likely, the people that have been waiting to get married, they find the opportunity of the festival of the new wine, which is historically where the virgins find their soulmate. It is precisely a festivity for a wedding. Unbelievable. It's looking the more and more that this is a festivity specifically created for the weddings of the Lamb with the church. And when I saw that there is a mystery on the 120 days from Passover to the 15th of Ab, and that they were 120 people on the upper room when the Holy Spirit came down on Pentecost, going into 120 days from Passover. Is that what it meant? Why is it so explicit that there were about 120? And was that important for us to know? I mean, there is 120 days from Passover to the 15th of Ab. And that is exactly when the Holy Spirit, when the feast of Pentecost, is it pointing to the feast of Shiloh? Is that what it is? Not only that, to mention that we have to present ourselves 3 times during the year, and the first and the last feast are on the 15th of the month. Will it make sense that the center feast, the second feast of the 3, is also on the 15th of the month? And when we look at the number 15 across the Bible, the 15 years that King Hezekiah was added, 15 days that the Apostle Paul spent with Peter, and several number 15 that come in the Bible, which are many, we see that perhaps it has a deeper meaning of unity with God. I've watched some videos of rabbis that say that no 15 means unity with God, and that could definitely be it. But when we look at this, we have a different perspective altogether. Let's watch.
The story behind this tradition goes back to an ancient ritual of women wearing white dancing in the vineyards of Judea. Not much is known about it, but it is believed to have taken place in the biblical city of Shiloh, now in the West Bank. Shelby Weiner went there for a celebration of love. In the vineyards of Tel Shiloh in the West Bank, the biblical holiday Tu B'Av is making a modern-day revival. An annual women's festival recreates the minor Jewish holiday at the ancient site of the Ark of the Covenant.
The Women's Festival in Shiloh is very unique. There's not many women events like this in Israel. And what's most unique about it is the attempt to revive a biblical holiday special day in which the girls of Israel would go and dance in the vineyards.
In contemporary Israeli culture, Tu B'Av is considered to be the Jewish Valentine's Day. But its roots go back thousands of years, when Jewish women would don white dresses, dancing through the vineyards, in hopes to be selected by a suitor. Organizers say the event has grown in recent years from a humble beginning.
Thousands of women come in from year to year. It started very small, and it's been growing every single year.
The women dancing at Tel Shiloh may not have found their husbands at the Tu B'Av festival, but love was in the air for the recreation of the holiday.
So by now, you're on the same page that I am. You can see that the reviving of this festivity and how many thousands of women are going in to the vineyards in the same place that they were dancing in Shiloh back in those days. It is impressive that this festivity is not only the 8th feast, but it could very well be the Feast of Pentecost. We don't know if this is exactly the Feast of Pentecost or if this is in fact an 8th feast created precisely uniquely for the weddings of the Lamb. And it is a feast of the Lord according to Judges chapter 21. It was a feast of the Lord, and it was celebrated yearly, and it was on the 15th of Ab. At this point, we can only speculate that even though that the details of the feast of Pentecost in the book of Leviticus chapter 23 may not agree as far as from our perspective with the 15th of Ab, it could be a possibility. There could be something that we are missing, and it is in fact the Feast of Pentecost. If not, it doesn't change anything. It means it could be the 8th feast as the number of Jesus, 8, the 888. An 8th feast created by God, and not like Hanukkah that it was created by the Israelites, but an 8th feast created by God uniquely and specifically for the marriage of the wedding of the Lamb. And this is very, very interesting. I mean, we're running out of time, and right now it's looking like this is it. So put your comments in there. Let's we only have a few days left until the 4th to the 5th of August, and everything is pointing to a sudden rapture, an imminent and soon rapture of the church. Until next time, God bless you all. Shalom.
Say that a vaccine will be